Well, it's time now for a browse through the French papers with Diptyque Laurent. Hi, Dipty.
Hi, Haxi.
Today we're starting with the political troubles of France's far-right party.
That's right. The political troubles at the Front National party continue. Florian Philippot, Marine Le Pen's former right-hand man, resigned in spectacular fashion on national TV yesterday. For the right-wing paper L'Opinion, it signals an extreme breakup between him and the far-right party. In a way, he's almost martyred himself. At least according to this cartoon from L'Opinion, you see Marine Le Pen telling Philippot, that's enough, come down from your cross, you're taking it too far. So a little tongue-in-cheek take of those events. Now, his resignation is huge because Philippot was constantly by Marine Le Pen's side during the presidential campaign. Ultimately, he was blamed for her defeat, but they were a tight-knit duo. I quote, we are far from the time when Marine Le Pen admitted that during their first meeting in 2009, after 10 minutes, they were finishing each other's sentences.
And this very ugly struggle for the far-right leadership has thrown the party into turmoil, hasn't it?
That's right, not just for the party, but also Marine Le Pen and how she's going to lead the party from now on. Now, Le Figaro, a right-leaning paper, the editors there are discussing this in today's editorial, saying since the presidential, and especially since that disastrous performance in a presidential debate, Le Pen's credibility has taken a hit. Marine still needs to, quote, prove her talent to seduce party members who are now looking towards another Le Pen, Marion Maréchal Le Pen, that's Marine's niece. Now, Le Pen needs to also decide on what kind of image, what political line the party is going to adopt, because Florian Philippot was one of the more moderate far-right members. With him leaving now, a certain image of the FN party also disappears, an image that actually made the party more mainstream and less of a fringe group.
And it appears, at least to the Huffington Post today, that Marine Le Pen's challenges are only just beginning.
Well, her first order of business is containing the fallout from this very ugly, very public spat with her former number two. Philippot has, of course, access to intimate party wheelings and dealings, and she has to ensure that he doesn't decide to make party secrets public in revenge for the way he was treated or for the way he believes he was treated. In other words, she really needs to contain this public fallout because party members really have their eyes on her now and they're looking to see how she's going to lead the party forward.
And Philippot may well be bitter about the way he's been treated, but he's not really an exception, is he? The party does have a habit of forcing out its VPs.
That's right. This is from one of those long reads from Mediapart, which is an investigative website. They've written a really interesting piece about the inner workings of the far-right party. In 45 years of existing between the leadership of Marine Le Pen and her father Jean-Marie, VPs have been systematically ejected from the party. The history of the party, I quote, is made from splits, thunderous departures and slammed doors. So you really get an idea of how volatile it can get inside, behind closed doors at the FN headquarters. One analyst interviewed evokes what he calls the small business-like structure of the far-right party, while another researcher is much more blunt, saying as soon as one of the Le Pens feels a potential threat, they organize a purge.
Diptyque, let's move on now to those protests, of course, engulfing France over Emmanuel Macron, the president's proposed labour reforms.
Well, it's rather the diminished scale of the protests that's making news today, at least in the left-leaning paper Libération, against labour reforms, a laborious mobilization. That's what the paper says in this play on words title. They note that tens of thousands of people did turn up for the protests yesterday, but this was nearly twice as less than those the previous week. Hopes of forcing the government's hand are fading, I quote there. Now, it comes, of course, as the government is set to adopt by decree 5 reform proposals this Friday, reform proposals looking to shake up the labor industry. This includes giving more negotiating power to French businesses and capping the maximum amount of compensation awarded to workers in labor disputes.
And finally, from you, let's end with some tributes to Liliane Bettencourt from the French papers.
Well, the world's richest woman and heiress of the L'Oréal fortune died at the age of 94 yesterday. Now, despite herself, she was drawn into several political storms, and unfortunately, in the latter part of her life, she was known more for those political storms. Most infamously, the Bettencourt name was sullied in a scandal over back in 2007 involving the then President Nicolas Sarkozy. Sarkozy. And there were, parallel to that, some very public accusations that Bettencourt's entourage were taking advantage of her financially. I quote, each time the Bettencourt name was associated with a scandal. But let's not end on that note. Let's not talk ill of the dead either. She was an extremely discreet woman, Le Figaro tells us, with a picture of her here looking fairly regal, I must say. I quote the current CEO of L'Oréal, who said, "A great lady of beauty has left us and we will never forget her."
Diptyque Laurent, with a look through the French papers. Thank you very much indeed. That brings us to the end of this bulletin, but do stay tuned. I'll be back in just a couple of minutes with all the top headlines.